Hello everyone, this is Mike from Integrating Technology in the Curriculum from Stockton's Master of Arts in Instructional Technology class. Today, Module 8, we're looking at collaboration. So basically what collaboration is, it's basically a shift from the traditional instructor-centered education to a more learner-centered approach where students work together in small groups to make the most out of their learning experiences and construct knowledge. And it's in a way similar to some of the other modules that we've looked at in the sense that some of its features are, having that supportive community that we talked about in the online discussion module, where it's that community that's supportive, trustworthy, a lot of respect and all of that. It also, requires that the engaged moderator, someone who's going to make sure that the students are doing their work in the group. Some of the readings we looked at sort of showed how sometimes what happens in group work is students don't actually work together in groups to do uh, their learning, and actually learning takes place as with themselves individually, and then they sort of come together and just share what they've learned instead of sharing ideas among each other. Uh, and also, it creates active learners, not so much learners who are sort of passively, a sponge and receiving information, but people actually taking responsibility for their learning. So for my curriculum specifically, collaborative learning, really I'm trying to incorporate sort of the online discussions and the video conferencing, but adapt and apply it to smaller groups. And I think it's going to work best through analyzing the primary source materials. And I think that's going to work well because this kind of stuff, it's difficult. Um, and so having students work together, they can teach each other. They can use their knowledge and skills to support one another, and ultimately create a engaged little learning group, um, where they're going to get more out of the class like that. And the it could be something, you know, small where they're looking at a few documents and sort of presenting the material in a blog or in a group sort of Wikipedia entry of some sort that's pulling in other information through. So that's going to allow students to sort of work on their strengths, um, which I think will be helpful and really beneficial for this kind of collaborative group um, thing. So let's look at the elements of thought. So the purpose, I think the important question here, or at least the purpose of what this is doing is asking how students can work together and use their knowledge and skills to get a better overall learning experience. And I think the key word there is work together, and that's the whole point of this collaborative module. And the question, the problem, group work usually takes place in sort of a physical environment traditionally. It's the group work in the classroom, or it's meeting in the library and studying with something together. So I think, the problem that you get, especially with these other changes that are happening, is, technology is getting into the mix, but also, distance learning and the sort of flexibility of giving students more options. So I think, the question is, how can you use technology, or more broadly, just the general idea of collaborative learning, to enhance group work and make it available, not just in physical environments, but also in digital environments. Information. So obviously the readings were very helpful. I really liked the article by Chang. She sort of looked at the use and misuse of collaborative learning technologies. I thought that was extremely helpful. Um, Also, and I really pulled in a lot of other modules, particularly the online discussion module and the video conferencing module, and sort of adapting them from bigger classroom kind of stuff to smaller group work. In fact, in some of my other modules, like the learning discussion or the online discussions specifically, I talked about creating small groups of students to use this kind of stuff. So I really brought in a lot of that information into that as well. So my expectations. So hopefully students are going to get more out of the class by working together. But I think the real key thing here, especially with collaborative work, is that the students are going to be able to use their own knowledge and skills to teach one another. And I think there you're going to sort of move up to the higher order thinking, um, where students are going to be able to take what they learned and apply it and transfer it and make sure they really understand it. Um, I think that's really key, especially for these primary source materials, because the idea is there's a lot of context that applies to it, and there's different levels that students can get out of it. So I think having them work together and having a student pull in some aspects that they're really familiar with into this one document or this one group of documents is going to be really great. Concepts. So the American Association of Colleges and Universities do these things. They're called the value rubrics, and they're all for these different skills and 21st century expectations that they have. They have one for teamwork, and I actually used that a little bit for this to see sort of what they consider to be you know sort of the benchmark for teamwork and collaborative learning. That was helpful. Again, that's the AACU's value rubric on teamwork. Also, um, there are a lot of ideas about this sort of social constructivist theories of learning, sort of working together with people, constructing knowledge as a group as opposed to sort of just having somebody tell you the answers. And also, as I said, some previous modules, all that kind of stuff. Again, I mentioned this in the last module. I'm seeing a lot of, I guess you can say, um, overlap between things we've learned in the past and things we're learning now, and how sort of these aren't just individual silos, but they're sort of broad ideas and themes where everything sort of piles on top of one another. So that's why this sort of previous modules really helping form how I'm going to use this kind of stuff. So the assumptions. So I think sort of a really big assumption that I have is that the course that's going to be applying collaborative learning is actually going to include some aspect that can use collaborative learning. Traditionally history courses are a lot of times lectures where you have this sort of traditional, subject matter expert in the front of the room just talking and students passively writing down notes. That has to change for this to work. There needs to be that sort of transfer of the instructor from the sort of that expert telling the class what they need to know to sort of more of a facilitator of learning, and transfer from students from passive to more active learners. And I think in the reading is the article by Chang again sort of makes a really good point. She says, they say that instructors don't just need to have an understanding of collaborative technologies, but also of collaborative pedagogies. And the idea behind that, then, in other words, is you just can't say work together. The course has to be designed or have some aspect designed so that they can work together and get more out of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So the consequences or implications. So hopefully, I expect that the result of this is going to be that they're going to learn more. They're going to meet new people, students are. But I think more importantly, the implication of this kind of stuff is in the long term, it's going to help them learn how to work together. So in the future, when they get a career, their job, they're going to be able to work in teams together with other people who have different experiences and different levels of expertise and create this sort of cohesive group. And that's something that's big today. It's required today. So the implication is teaching students how to do it in class is going to lead to them doing it in the workplace. Point of view. So for students, I think always have to consider the basic stuff like do they have enough time, do they have the technology to do it, um, also how do their individual learning styles and personality traits, how is that going to impact working together in groups. Some people prefer to work alone, so is it going to be you know is it going to be more difficult for them to work in groups together? How are the groups going to behave together? Um, are they going to work fine? Is there going to be conflict? Stuff like that. For the instructor point of view, um, I think a big thing is how are they going to verify, sort of grade students working together in groups? Obviously there's going to be some sort of project or some sort of you know assessment that they can do at the end, or create some sort of wiki page or blog post. But as often is what happens in group work is sometimes you have 4 or 5 students, two of them do most of the work, the rest of them don't. So how are you going to make sure that each student is getting the most out of um, this group work? And I think a lot of that comes with the moderation and the sort of the engaged moderator making sure students are doing what they're supposed to do. um, I think it also applies to student per point of view too. What happens in a group where somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do? How does that affect the group overall? um, from an administrator point of view, I think I think the grading thing is important, because it may require changes in the way institution grades. I'm not really sure how, but that's one thing. I think another big thing, at least the most important thing, is for them to create collaborative spaces, whether that's sort of physical spaces like flexible classrooms, or learning, sort of collaborative learning areas where groups of people can get together outside of a classroom, and digital collaborative spaces, whether that's something like Blackboard Collaborate or other sort of Google Hangout tools, making sure that provide training and sort of some kind of support of any sorts. It's sort of important thing that has to happen, as well as I think too, from the administrative side of things, is just supporting students and instructors as they do this, and creating that safe and supportive environment that says go and do this. So that's collaboration. Again, as always, let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.